Welkom bij deze atypische podcast over anders ondernemen en atypisch in het leven staan. Ik ben Annelies Delmoitier, 40er, moeder van 2 en in 2014 ben ik bewust uit de rat race gestapt om fulltime ondernemer te worden. Als echte creatieve generalist combineer ik verschillende bedrijfstakken. De meesten kennen mij als freelance administratief wonder, maar ik ben ook salesagent Benelux voor Amazonas hangmatten en hangstoelen. Ik ben Certified Service Partner van Teamleader. Ik ben ondernemerscoach en ik manage sinds corona ook een webshop. Je hoort het al, een heel atypische combinatie. De rode draad tussen al die bedrijfstakken is efficiëntie en optimalisatie. Hoe? Ik hou van structuren creëren die de outcome verbetert en autonomie teruggeeft aan de ondernemers. Ik doe dit op een doelgerichte, heel eerlijke, oplossingsgerichte, inspirerende en waarschijnlijk atypische manier. In deze podcast laat ik graag andere atypische ondernemers aan het woord, die ook anders hard werken. En met hen heb ik mega inspirerende gesprekken. Veel luisterplezier met deze aflevering. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening when you are listening to this episode of the Atypical podcast. And we have a primeur. It's the first one done in English, so I hope I'm not confused and don't say anything that's not appropriate. But I have a special guest today. I saw him, I think, about 2 years ago on the Worksmarter stage of Teamleader, and he left me flabbergasted. And as you all know, I read a lot of books, and the uitgeverij Pelkmans, who I work with, sent me a summary of his book, and I thought, this is the book I want to read, and this is the guy I want to interview, because he's an entrepreneur as well. I'm talking about Sebastien Bellin, Sebastien, whatever. So, Sebastien, welcome. Thank you for letting me having this opportunity. And can you please present yourself for the people that, like I did, never heard of you?
Yeah, well, thank you, Annelies, for inviting me to your podcast and allowing me to share my story, share my book, share my experiences. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Yes, my name is Sebastien Bellin. I was born in Brazil 46 years ago to two Belgian parents. So my parents are both Belgian. So my dad is van Obourg in near Bergen, and my mom is from Brussels. And my dad worked in pharmaceuticals for many years, UCB, normally UCB Pharma. And they sent us all over the world, Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Denmark, Italy, Belgium. So I was a kid that traveled and was gifted the perspective of many different cultures, many different approaches to problems, to life. And I received a scholarship to play basketball and study in the United States. It was mostly basketball and a little bit less of studying. But I spent 4 years in New York and at Michigan, where I met my wife in Michigan at the second university. And from there, I went on to play 15 years professional basketball in Italy and in Belgium. And I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug at the age, when I retired from basketball. And 2016, I had kind of an aha moment where I survived a terrorist attack and came very close to death. Subsequently had 16 surgeries, had to learn to walk again, really changed my life for the better. And I'm a little bit on a mission to share these lessons through all these experiences of my life that have really allowed me to have an amazing life. Despite all that has happened, I've turned those things I've recycled those things into positives, and it allows me to have such a great, amazing life. I sincerely mean it.
Mhm.
And it's not easy to live with that, Annalise. It's not easy to live with that knowledge and that reality of having an amazing life when the kind of aha moment, March 16th, caused so much pain and suffering. I saw 32 people die, around me that day. And it's not easy to live with that, knowing how good my life is today.
Mhm.
And it creates guilt sometimes. It creates, why me? Why am I so lucky? And so it really is kind of a mission to to try to share these lessons that allow me to have such an amazing life with others, and hopefully it can create their own blueprint of happiness
Mhm.
in their lives.
Mhm. Because that's the title of your new book. Is it your first book?
It is my first book.
So I can say your book.
My book, yes.
Yeah, a
Which
blueprint
which
for
also
happiness.
the book was mostly for that purpose too, to share the lessons, to share this incredible luck that I've had. And luck is part fate, part proactiveness, the balance between both. So what can you do every day to try to increase, the chances of fate becoming your reality?
You always have a choice.
Absolutely.
Yes. So now we know who you are, but you are also a dad, you're a partner, you're a son, you're a brother, you have a lot of caps, and you're
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, what a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. My when I retired from basketball, with three other people, or four other people, I should say, uh, we started a little company called Keymotion. This was in 2012, and it was the world's first automated video production system. So it was fully automated system that could live stream a basketball game or volleyball game 100% automatically. And we were the first to do this.
Mm.
Um, and we sold that little company in less than 3 years to some American investors. And that's the reason why I started going from Louvain-la-Neuve, to New York nonstop, because it was a spinoff of UCL. And when we sold it, the new owners, the Americans, opened offices in New York, and that's why I found myself in Zaventem that morning,
Mhm.
because at that time I was spending my life in airplanes, not very eco-friendly,
No.
going back and forth
Mhm.
to expand Keymotion, this company that we had sold, onto the United States market.
Mm. And what do you do today? What can we call you for?
Well, today I kind of split into three very clear kind of passions. One is I do keynotes and workshops. So I've designed kind of empowerment of sales. So I'm a sales guy at heart. So how do you empower or connect sales, pre-sales? In tech sales, it's very important to have what I call pre-sales, which is more technical solutions architects. So how do you integrate the product you're selling, the technology you're selling, into the workflow of your client? So inside in sales, there should be a technical sales, which I call pre-sales, sales, and of course customer service.
Mhm.
And so it's the three. How do you integrate those three into a sales process? So I've designed workshops, and I've catered my keynote to more specifically, corporate empowerment of the individual, of the team, and of the company,
Mm.
all in one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I've invested myself into, 3 startups that I try to help. And mostly I get out of the way, I think it's very important to trust and respect the ideas of these young founders. And yeah, so I do consulting, I do workshops and keynotes,
Mm.
and then I've invested into a handful of startups. So those are the 3 kind of
Mm.
areas
Yeah.
which if you think I can help, I'm more than glad to help.
I'll put all your, not all your socials, because we had a little discussion beforehand and you said I'm not on the socials. So I'll put just the LinkedIn on the show
Yeah,
notes and they can contact you. Yeah, and we
perfect.
have sales in common. So as I said, I worked 16 years for Procter & Gamble. So I did
Beautiful.
sales myself for 16 years.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Seb, so you're an entrepreneur since 2012.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say 2012, where that shift, that focus shifted to the entrepreneurial mindset and approach, I would say.
And why did you want to become an entrepreneur and not on a pay list, paycheck somewhere?
Um, I think it was kind of the shift of mindset where, I needed something really different after professional sports. Um, you know, by 18 years old, I was already on the junior national team of Belgium. And then 4 years of university, 15 years of professional basketball. It created a very so grateful for that, but that's really quantity driven. It's an industry of really quantity driven mindset. And like I write about in my book, the more you feed your mind quantity, right? I think the more it takes up the space of quality. So quality is all that is not measured. It's creativity, imagination, love, passion, tolerance, empathy, all those things that I believe are the differentiator and in life. And quantity is, money, stats, rankings, all those things, which is very, very heavy in sports, in professional sports, but also in corporate.
Mhm.
And so I just felt like I needed something completely different to feed this quality that I started to more and more realize was the key, to a really fulfilling, happy life. And because, yeah, okay, I was able to put a little bit of quantity away and have a kind of a head start in life after that career. My wife was also a teacher who had been working the whole time as well. So I was able to have the luxury and the privilege to say, "Nah, I want something a little bit different,"
Mhm.
and not go back into kind of the 9 to 5 corporate where I felt this need for quality, creativity, imagination, thinking, being free to think and try things that aren't, let's say, too structured. Um,
Standard.
yes, exactly. Really appealed to me.
Mhm. And is there then an entrepreneur that inspired you in your decision? Is somebody you're seeing as a god?
Yeah, well, I think I'm the product of, like um, I always try to find the balance between things. So I try not to copy. I try to really be myself for the good and for the bad of that, to learn along the way. But what really helped me was, for example, my dad, my father, Jean Bellin, was a very successful corporate businessman. So I really, since a young age, I remember conversations with him. I remember, sneaking in to the living room and hiding behind the couches when he had, business people over, listening to their conversations, listening to how they, yeah, talk and do business and communicate. that really affected me. And then you had my mom, who's an ex-physical therapist, very natural, very, very hippie-ish. So I would say I kind of was influenced when you asked, is there an entrepreneur? I try to bring those outside influences into my own reality of what entrepreneurship is. So kind of my heroes was my father, was my mother, was my brothers as well. My brother is a musician who was in the military as well. So really kind of different approaches to life. And I've always tried to observe people around me who have a different approach, who do things a little bit differently. And I try to take the best of all of those and apply it to my reality, which is, I think, what entrepreneurial is a very high level of credibility and authenticity to what you're trying to create or launch.
I add also integrity to it. And I think for me, it's like putting all the values together. I'm not having like a one role model, but the question came from my audience asking, what are the role models of all the guests you have? And I have all kind of answers, so I like yours as well.
Well, and the role model is exactly that. It's, sometimes when I speak to audiences, I can see their faces, right? Sometimes what I say is it's too good to be true. It's utopic. It's that doesn't work. But I think that's the reason why life continues to smile at me. Why I continue to be so lucky. Why things continue to just fall into place naturally. It doesn't mean there's no hard work. It doesn't mean that I don't have bumps on the road. I'm sincere when everything works out. Everything with a little bit of patience and faith, in yourself and in life. Things always work out, and I think people feel that. I think when you have that confidence in life and that authenticness, people see it. It's impossible to fake that kind of happiness. And I'm more and more happy. And so that need to be really authentic to my life. I don't need, social medias, or I don't need agents, or I don't need people. It just flows. Life just flows. And I hope that's the feeling that people feel after they hear me speak, after they read a book, or after they spend some time with me on a project, consulting, whatever. I hope they feel a little bit differently.
How I interpreted this when I heard your keynote or saw your keynote and I read your book, it's you create your own good luck by living the way you live.
Yes. Yeah. My mom always used to say, my mom is from the French-speaking side of Belgium. So, aide-toi et le ciel t'aidera. Help yourself and the sky, life will help you. And it's a beautiful way of kind of looking. You do have to work. There's no secret. You have to work. But the harder the work you work, the luckier you get. And I think that the earlier you start working and creating that quality mindset, after a while, it's boule de neige. It's like a momentum that doesn't stop. It's very hard to stop that momentum because it's limitless. Anything that's qualitative is limitless. There is no limit to quality.
There isn't.
There is very severe limits to quantity. And that's what creates a mindset of that's tired. It's burnouts, all that. It's because actually a quantity mindset actually creates extremes.
I just wanted to tell that I think that quantity-driven society leaves us with so many burnouts. That's one of the reasons I think that we have so many burnouts.
Of course. Yeah, because quantity mindset. So that means that your mind is focusing on quantity, which quantity is a good thing too. You know, I like quantity. I have nice things. I'm not a hermit in the middle of the forest, like I always say, but it's never a focus. It
Mm-hmm.
really is never a focus because I know that the more I focus on quantity, the more I'm teaching my mind to be limited. Because quantity, like we said, if you can measure it, it's finite. There's a limit to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you start measuring and comparing, the more your mind becomes extreme. Why? Because if you reach this level of measurement or comparing, it's good. If you don't, it's bad. And good and bad is extreme.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I believe that extremes are exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting to live at extremes.
Mm-hmm. You adore the grays, yeah?
I love gray, and there's a reason why it's called gray matters. You know, gray matter, the brain matter, because gray really matters. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the balance between black and white, it's gray.
Yeah.
And when we say gray matter, la matière, you know, gray, well, it's the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's we have a lot in common. While the values I think we share, we have a lot in common. Seb, I was going through my questions, and one of the reasons I called you here was, of course, you are a keynote speaker. And what is typical about a keynote or a consultant, but what is atypical on your keynote or your workshops, your consulting?
What's atypical about me? What's atypical? I I really pride myself. I really pride myself. I really feel it's important where anything I talk about, I've experienced it. And it's a mirror of my work in progress. You know, I make a lot of mistakes. I'm far from perfect. And therefore by speaking, it's also my blueprint of my work in progress. And I think I really pride myself in people feeling that. You know, the like we talked about before, authenticity. Um, I I I have the I have the luck of listening to also a lot of keynote speakers. Sometimes when I'm at a conference, there's other keynote speakers, and I can immediately tell and be inspired by those who don't have the perfect structure or the perfect, um, uh, connotations and flow or whatever. But I'm inspired by, oh my goodness, this person, they've lived that, you know, or they live by that, or they're constantly trying to improve themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to really become better keynote speakers. They're trying to connect more and more with the audience, and it's less about you know uh, bringing energy to yourself, but sharing what
Mm-hmm.
you've learned with the audience, with people. And I think that's when you see that two-way street, I think that's what's really atypical. Is I tell the audience, hey, I should be thanking you, and I always start by thanking the audience. Even when I'm consulting, for companies, it's I'm benefiting more than they are. You know, the audience allows me to share my authentic story, and it's like I'm in therapy every day. Every time I speak, I can tell that there's something. I make sure that there's something in my keynotes, in my workshops, that can help the audience. And when I succeed at that, I feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, it's less I'm sharing the good that life has gifted me. And it's the same thing with consulting. when I consult or when I'm part of projects, the amount of knowledge that I learn from these people is incredible. And I think, to finish your question, I think that's such a critical point is humility, to be able to admit that actually the audience is bringing you much more than you're bringing them. And to be able to admit that the company you're helping is teaching you far more than you're teaching them. And I will say that a good consultant and a good keynote speaker puts himself out of work. So meaning that if you do your job correctly, and if you're humble enough to bring something, well, that company will never need you again.
Mm-hmm.
That audience will never need to hear you again because you've connected. It's clear, it's structured, there's humility in it. And so you part ways and you create ripples that they continue and that you continue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important to me, to be able to have that authenticity of the two-way street.
What left me, or what struck me, you are famous, entre guillemets, but I didn't know who you were, and you could use your name. You could have used your ego on the stage in Ghent, and you did not at all.
Yeah, well, I believe that's, I've switched it around in my mind. We live in a world, Annalise, where people believe that quantity creates quality, right? So the more quantity I have, the more quality I will have in life. I believe it's the exact opposite. After a certain level, and I don't care to measure that level. Some people will say this much, some people, after a certain level, quantity has very, very, very little ROI, return on investment. It's tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people spend so much energy and time creating more quantity, which gives them far less ROI. On the contrary, the more quality you have, which is limitless, it creates unmeasurable ROI. Like you can't measure it.
Mm-hmm.
And so social media to me, ego, those are all, they are the best friends of quantity, right? A quantity mindset cannot exist without ego.
Mm-hmm.
So the approach I always try to create in my day to day, and there's moments where I fail. It's okay, but an ego is driven by comparing and measurement. If you diminish comparison and measurement, you will start diminishing and soon enough eliminate the ego. And once you eliminate the ego, you create more and more space for feeling, for your senses. And once you start feeling life, then you are a high performer.
But it
Because
hurts.
then it's incredible. It's like it's the greatest skill set, unlimited skill set that you can create in yourself.
Mm.
Because people forget we are the evolution of really, really incredible energy, right? And what is when we feel, we're feeling energy enter us, but that energy has existed in many different life forms for since the creation of life. And so we're tapping into a really highly intelligent source.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the greatest challenge for our society today. Do you tap into an energy source of quantity, which is limited and very, very extreme? Or do you tap into an energy source that's, it's
Limitless.
incredible. Do you think life or do you feel life? And the key is to feel life.
Mm-hmm.
And if the first source of input into your life is feeling, then you've made it, you know? And so the ego will block that. The ego always puts itself first.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're blocking feeling rather and for the space of thinking. And thinking is, look, it's necessary. We need to think, but it should always be the second step, not the first step. And once you start becoming masters of your feelings, of your emotions, of those emotional intelligence, all those things, yeah, you become a natural high performer.
Mm-hmm. Although it takes a long while before you switch.
Yeah, well, it takes there's no speed, there's no measurement of how long it takes.
No. But I have the feeling, that's a good sense. I have the feeling that you need to go through something before you can switch into thinking to feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, something everybody needs an aha moment,
You need
right?
to
Everybody needs
awaken.
an awakening, exactly. But I also believe, Annalise, that you can create that, at um, you can speed up that process. Not about, it doesn't have to speed up where you have to have it by 13 years old or anything like that. No, I'm saying that it's like enzymes. When you take an enzyme, well, enzymes speed up reactions. And so I always look at experiences as enzymes. Will this help me speed up my growth, my happiness? You know, because it's not about how fast, but I do need to grow. And I think you can do that. I have two daughters now, and a lot of my energy shifts to younger generations to needing the best for my daughters. Not the best in quantity, the best in quality. And I find that the education system that we subject our kids to, I'm not saying it's broken. I'm saying that it's no longer adapted to the reality of today
Mm-hmm.
because we bombard our kids with quantity. We create quantity driven mindsets in our kids. So social media, phones, it's about how many likes, it's about how many views, it's about how many times I post, it's about how many times I go on social media to check to communicate with my friends. Everything is quantity driven. Grades, oh, I got this grade, I got this diploma. And we raise our kids with this obsession in quantity and this focus driven quantity. And we forget that, okay, they're important. But on the contrary, I see the kids that really, for as long as possible, have a quality mindset drive. So kids that are in sports, in music, in theater, in whatever it is, where their passion is alive. When someone is passionate about something, they don't measure. I remember when I was playing basketball when I was young, or sports, any sport. I was crazy about sports. I didn't I didn't look at my watch and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can only play this for an hour and then I have to do something else." I mean, you had to remind me to eat sometimes when I was playing sports. And I think that's one of the big differences that I see in the US versus Europe. And it's not one is better than the other. Again, it's the best of both worlds. I'm lucky that I can get the best of Europe and Belgium and the best of the United States. Um, One of the things that I see here, the society and education system creates far more room for passion. So sports, theater, the symphony, music, whatever it is, music, it's considered part of the educational process. experiencing something is really, really high on the educational list, on the educational approach here in the States. Where in Europe, I find that very problematic. Go tell a European parent that their kid is going to do 4 hours of sports a day, and I'm not talking about sports to become professional. I'm talking about sports in general to have fun. My daughters will most likely not become professional athletes, and I hope they don't actually. But my daughters play so much sports over here with the purpose of fun, of discipline, of learning what it is to be on a team, of, passion, all those things. And I don't think there's a lot of room for that in the educational system in Belgium. We really try to program almost these kids to in academia and no longer for experiences in life.
Heavy stuff to think about.
Yeah, well, again, there's no right way of doing things. There's our ideal way of doing things, what's right for us. And I think that's where so much the word confidence is so important. The more confidence you have, and there's a thin line at a young age between arrogance and confidence, right? But kids that grow up with confidence, well, they're the kids that dare to do things a little bit differently, to be atypical, right? And how do you get confidence? Well, I believe it's by learning to fail really quickly.
By trying.
By trying. Get embarrassed. Get on the court and get embarrassed. Have to learn a new language and speak in front of people where they're going to be like, what are you talking about? I can't understand you. Learn to fail, because it's through failure that you learn. So the goal is not to fail. Okay. The goal is to succeed. But in order to succeed, you have to have failed. This idea of, in Belgium, it drives me crazy how we shun failure. I personally, I will never invest in someone or that has not failed somewhere, because it's really interesting. What I found when you're talking to investors, I spent a lot of time talking to investors and raising money. And one of the things that I find is incredible in the United States is the humbleness and the transparency of failure. And say, listen, I failed. This is where it didn't work, but this is where I learned. Because no American investor wants to pay for somebody's learning curve. They don't want to do that. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that.
No problem.
No American investor wants to pay for a learning curve. So a learning curve is, again, there's a very respected approach here. Where this guy has failed. He's learned. And now he's ready, right? Where in Europe, it's the exact opposite. In Europe, you're going to hide your failures because, you don't want people to think that you're not capable of doing something.
Yep.
And I think that's the big danger, in entrepreneurship, is this stigmatism of how we approach failing in order to succeed. Now, again, the goal is to succeed. But I don't know any athlete, I don't know any entrepreneurship that got it right the first time. Because if you get it right the first time, the chances are it's not really wow. It's not really special. Everyone's done it. And so because everyone's done it, you have the blueprint to get it right. Something unique, something different, something atypical that's most likely someone with confidence says, no, I'm going to do things differently. And if they oser, if they dare to do things differently, well, yeah, it's probably going to have one or two rough drafts along the way, you know? And I feel that in the United States, that is far more, that's the driver. That's the driver where it makes me feel a lot good because I have no problem in failing whatsoever. But because I failed, I've become pretty successful at learning where not to fail.
I think here in Europe, it's more like one of your pillars that you're writing and talking about. We fear failure.
Yeah.
And it's not a danger.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's why one of my pillars is understanding the difference between fear and danger. You know, because danger, entrepreneurs, mothers, people in general, they fear so much something that's not a reality. See, if you're not in danger, the only place fear can exist is in your mind. That's the only place. And that fear creates a moment where our self is taking out of the present moment, right? Because fear puts you in the future or in the past. And the only reality that really exists is the present moment. It's right now. It's this conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, a mind that is not present, well, you're already taking it because your mind is saying, oh, I'm not present. But before that, you have to feel present, almost like roots.
Yeah.
And fear is, I mean, it's the number one specialist, you know, of taking us out of the present moment. So danger is the only reality. And if you are in danger, you'd be amazed how equipped and knowledgeable and powerful your body already is. No,
And your mind.
We are really powerful people, but we're diminishing our chances of success and survival because we're not present. We're in something that existed in the past or something that probably will never happen or is in the future.
Fear has numbed us.
Absolutely.
No.
And we are a society that fears more and more.
I think fear is selling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's what I talk about, Annalise, in, you know, one of the luckiest things about surviving the attacks is that I am 100% sure that we live, and I am focused on that in the worst moment of my life, in the worst and most difficult moment, when I was this close to death, I was helped. And I saw a lot of good people around me, you know, and I think that's the biggest eye opener is I do not believe this world is negative.
Mm-hmm.
It's bullshit. And I don't fall into that trap anymore. The majority of people, whether in Belgium, whether in the United States, whether in the Philippines, the majority of people are good, honest, hardworking people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the handful of idiots that we have chosen to focus on that create the generalization that, oh, this world is terrible. You know, and that's not true. This world is amazing. This life is amazing. Even in our own lives, we will let one little thing, you know, make the global picture. And it drives me crazy because I meet people and I say, hold on a second. Wait, do you realize that your kids are healthy? You have this, you have a roof over your head, you have this, you have that, you have this, you have that. But you're going to look at this one thing, you know, come on. It makes no sense. There's no logic in our thinking. If we slowed down and simplified things and started feeling, we'd feel a lot better if we detached our minds from the reality from our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you need to grow into that. It's not like from one day to the other.
For sure.
You understand.
For sure.
we talked about your aha moment. Was it the attacks, your aha moment, that you thought, I'm really good at what I'm doing for the moment? I'm an expert at.
I don't think I'm an expert because I think you can always learn and grow, right? And that's always my focus is how can I improve? How can I grow? How can I learn? Um, what I think my aha moment did was everything was a little bit mishpaput. So I've always known I think differently. I always known that I've had a different experiences in life. But the aha moment was all that became very clear in my mind. You know, it became very clear. I have felt all those things. My whole life I felt different. My whole life I felt, you know, yeah, not better or worse than anybody, but I felt unique. I had a unique upbringing. I had a unique approach to life, unique experiences. And all of a sudden, I was able to take it from the feeling and structure it, in my mind. It became very, very clear. And yeah, all these feelings that I've had kind of were channeled into a very clear thought process and perspective where, again, I was lucky to always feel and experience these things. That's the starting point. But then at one point, yeah, you do need to bring the mind into it, but not the ego.
Yeah.
If you allow the feelings to happen first, then you will trigger the mind, but without the ego. Because the starting point is feeling. It's the non-measurable. And I think that's what the aha moment was. It just gave me, okay, it was like almost doubling down on what life had taught me.
Yeah, it gave you direction.
Yeah.
Until now, what is the thing that you're most proud of?
The thing I am most proud of, I think it's, when my daughters look at me and they just feel like everything I've tried to lead by example. They have their own aha moments. They have lots of small aha moments. And it's that look that my daughters give me like, oh my gosh, it's not about being right or wrong, but it's like, that works. That really works, and I can just see that little light go off in their eyes where, yeah, okay, my dad knows a little bit what he's talking about. I think those are the proudest moments I have, is that credibility, when that credibility, authenticity hits my daughters, and our connection becomes even closer than it is.
Now, my kids are now 22 and 24.
Okay.
And I'm not saying like, told you so, but when you see the lights go on in their eyes,
Yeah.
and they realize, mom was
Yeah.
right. And then I glance and I said, mom is always right.
Yeah. Exactly. That's true.
It's by experience that we learn and lead by example. Indeed, you can be as negative as you can, and then you project that on the kids. And if you're positive, then you bring positivity to their education, and then they bring positivity in their own world. Huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Specifically in your entrepreneurship or your career, what was the most negative thing, fuck up you had, but what did you learn about that specific?
Yeah, I had some really difficult moments
And
with.
it's that question came also from the audience to learn, because we all make mistakes, and as we talked before, we hide them far away. But it's not because we made those mistakes that all the listeners need to make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's why the question came.
I would say I've made the big mistake a lot of times in wanting to go too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Patience of listening to what the market tells you is an incredible attribute. We live in a world where people say, yeah, launch, go quickly, market share, go quickly as possible. Someone will steal your idea. And that is so nonsense. I think there's a big difference in when you build a technology, you have to first create the technology that fits the product, right? So there's a difference between the technology and the product. But the product already has to be known to fit the technology. So it's the chicken and the egg, and people want to get that equation. They want to get it right really quickly. And so patience allows you to make that bridge between technology and product. And to me, the focus has to remain on the technology. You have to build a very solid foundation, whether it's a SaaS, whether it's whatever it is. You have to build a very solid technology foundation, but you also have to know the product market fit very well. Mm-hmm. And you have to have that in parallel without taking your focus on the product, on the technology. And patience allows that bridge to be shortened naturally. Because the more you focus on the technology and the more you listen to the markets, you talk to people, you learn about your future clients, the more that bridge will build itself. Instead of wanting to launch the technology, go as fast as possible, I don't think, if I was to redo it, I would be far more patient.
What about the marketing advice you hear a lot? You need to sell before you're ready. You need to launch before you're ready. And like for online courses, you need to sell it and then you start creating it.
Yeah. Well, again, to each his own, there's lots of good advice out there, and I don't like to think of something good or bad, right or wrong. You need to be authentic to yourself. How does it fit you? Are you a person who loves to launch and hey, I'm going to launch and I'll make it happen? Like Richard Branson said, if you get offered a great job and you've never done it before, accept it and learn along the way, because they're offering you a job for a reason. They see something in you. Mm-hmm. I think slightly different. I think after a while, we have a lot more cards in our hands than we think, because we're not feeling it, we think it. So patience, really bring your experiences into the moment, into the present moment, and learn to balance things out. It's always a question of balance. Technology, product, vision, execution, quantity, quality. It's always a balance between both, but the focus always has to be clear. And once you get your focus clear, it's tough to stop.
And you're in the flow.
Yep.
Completely different question. What is the most atypical thing you did in your entrepreneurship or your career? And I'm thinking of something I read in the book, but I'm not sure if you're going to mention that one.
Well, why don't you mention that one?
What I was astonished by is you renegotiating your contract at the club in Wevelgem and downsizing your salary. I've never heard somebody doing so.
Well, so you can, even the president at the time, Joost Verkruijs, so he was the owner and founder of Bekaerts Biscuit, and I really respected him. And that's something that's always been a reality, is for me, quality is first. Quantity will come if you stay true to your quality. And in that sense, I did not feel like I was bringing enough quality to the team, so the quantity shouldn't be there. And so if you stay true, authentic to that, yes, I renegotiated, and I can even, I'm not going to tell you the amount, but it was a significant amount that I left on the table.
I find that very atypical.
It's always helped me. because again, it's always been quality has brought me much more than in terms of happiness, 10 times more than quantity has ever brought me.
Yeah, I love that that anecdote. If you were to go for a walk, because it's still early in the States, and you would meet the 18-year-old Sebastien, what for advice would you give him about life or entrepreneurship?
Oh, I would hands down be more present. My life changed when I started being more present. When we're young, we're ambitious. We think of the future. We think of, oh yeah, well, all I'm going to accomplish. And I would really, really urge to learn how to be mindful of the present moment. Just the only reality that exists is the present moment. And if you become really good at mastering the reality, the present moment, your life changes. Are you a realist, or are you being a realist means being real, and being real means focusing on the present moment, on the only reality that exists. And I would really urge people to slow down a little bit and become masters of the present moment.
And being a realist doesn't mean being a negative person. Huh?
Absolutely. And because the majority of life is beautiful, is positive.
Mm-hmm. As I told you before, I'm reading a lot of books. Last year I read, I think, 80. I'm almost finishing yours. Is there a book you want to put on my to-read list? A book that brought you much?
I would two books. One, I would say the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. It's a really nice. It's the New Yorker, a journalist from the New Yorker who wrote a book, really, really good book. The Tipping Point, very simple as well. And the second one is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And when we talk about, it's a fiction, but it's historical fiction. And when we talk about patience, it's the story of a cathedral being built in the medieval ages, and the patience. The idea of a master builder starting a project, and back in those days, it took like 150 years to build cathedrals. So a master builder would start and not see the end of their cathedral. And I love the concept of a master having the faith that they're starting something that will be grandiose one day, but that he's going to have to pass on that skill set to somebody else to finish it.
Yeah.
I love that image for entrepreneurship.
I'll put those two books on my list. Thank you for mentioning them. I have a last question. You gave us now a lot of advice. Is there anything you are looking for? Can my audience give you something in return?
No, I sincerely mean it. I have everything I need. The only thing, that I'm always interested in is if you feel that you can help and teach me something, don't feel a need to reach out. But I'm always eager to connect with people who have also unique experiences or approaches to life, to be able to learn and grow myself. So that's the only thing I would say.
Okay. Thank you very much, Seb, for your time, for your long explanation of happiness, the blueprint for happiness. I loved reading it. I'm going to put it in the show notes. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you next time, maybe in Belgium. Now I know who you are.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Annelies.
Bye.
Talk to you very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dank je wel voor het luisteren. En hoor je me graag bezig en wil je zeker geen aflevering missen? Volg me dan op Spotify of abonneer je via iTunes. Laat daar eventueel ook een review na, want hoe meer atypische zielen in de ondernemerswereld, hoe liever volgens mij. Via Checkpot kan je een recensie geven. Dat zou ik mega fantastisch fijn vinden. En heb je liever beeld bij de klank? Abonneer je dan zeker op mijn playlist op het YouTube-kanaal. De show notes kan je vinden via mijn website www.endless.biz/podcast. En Endless is heel atypisch met de A van Annelies. Ik kijk alvast uit naar de volgende aflevering en hopelijk jullie ook. Tada!